Welcome back. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke, and Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com. And Grayson, Richard Reese is entering the portal this spring. Not a surprise. Why do you? I'm maybe more surprised that it took until spring. Why do you think he waited?
You know, I think there's a lot that kind of goes into these decisions, right? Especially for someone that has been at Baylor for a while now and has been, you know, a very loyal part of the program, had just an awesome freshman season. And, you know, I think there's something to graduating and getting a degree. And so I do think that that's probably the case here with Richard, is that he'll probably graduate in the spring and then be a grad transfer and, you know, go somewhere, go wherever he wants, but get his Baylor degree before doing so. I hope that's the case, and that's what I believe to be the case. And if so, I mean, that's great for him, you know, to finish out that Baylor degree and then go find a place where he's going to, you know, get utilized and get a chance to really excel. Because I think it was pretty clear, you know, going into this spring and off season period, you know, you got Bryson Washington, you got Dawson Pendergrass, but also you brought in two really, really talented freshmen in Cade Knighton and Michael Turner. And I just think there's a lot of competition there, a lot of really good players. And I think this makes a lot of sense for Richard, but hopefully he does get his degree first. And if so, I mean, that's just an awesome thing for him.
So what would you pinpoint, or is it an amalgamation of things that led to his numbers dropping off the way that they did? I mean, scheme changes, injuries, new players coming in, C or D, all of the above. I guess it would be D, right? But, I mean, that freshman year, he was phenomenal there in 2022. And then, you know, last year didn't even reach 60 carries, had one score, less than 300 yards. You know, how would you just describe the career, I guess, of Richard Reese, Grayson?
So two separate phases here, or really three, honestly. So that first year, that freshman year, I know that everyone talks about how disappointing that year was, and it truly was. And there were just a lot of little things that went wrong that just kept that team from, you know, being good and really actually having a good year. I mean, you change a couple plays here and there, and you're looking at a much different season, whether it's, you know, the BYU game or the night game against West Virginia or the TCU game where they should have won at the end but just couldn't. But the biggest thing that they had was a really good offensive line. And that was true in 2021, as we saw with Abram Smith and Treston Ebner. And then you fast forward to 2022, and they were still really good. They weren't as productive as they were the year before, but still awesome. And I mean, you go look at some of those runs by Richard Reese, and there's just huge holes that are opening up for him. And he truly is, you know, a one-cut runner. He's not really a make-you-miss type guy. That's not really what he does, but he gets downhill in a hurry, gets skinny through the hole, and can do things like that, especially in that wide zone scheme. Then 2023 happens, and you see what happens when there isn't an offensive line. And Baylor just could not block. And so you really just needed, you know, anyone that could take a hit and fall forward. So you saw a lot more Dom Richardson and, of course, Dawson Pendergrass, just guys who could at least get you, you know, a yard or two when there's nothing there. And then this past season, you know, I think it was kind of more the same, but obviously the scheme changed. And so now you're looking at more of an inside zone running scheme. And there's still a lot about, you know, power and fighting for those extra yards, as I think we saw with Dawson Pendergrass and Bryson Washington. But even more so than that, you have to be able to make guys miss in the hole. And that's just not Richard Reese's style. That's not where he excels and flourishes. And so therefore, you know, you watch him run and you see him, you know, get tackled by an arm tackle. And then you watch Bryson Washington run and you're seeing him make a guy miss, power through the hole, maintain his speed, maintain that acceleration that allows you to create big plays. So I think once we got to that phase, it was more of a scheme fit issue for Richard Reese than anything else.
So final thing, I guess, on him, because we have, you know, non-Baylor listeners, plenty of folks around the Big 12. Do any programs jump out to mind that would potentially be a landing spot for him? I mean, obviously a former Baylor guy that's played in the last handful of years, you think, oh, well, Texas Tech and Joey McGuire could maybe use him. And then Houston down there with Sean Bell. But did anybody pop out to you as a potential spot to watch for Richard Reese, or somewhere you think would be a good fit for him?
Protect your online privacy with Nord VPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com.
I think anywhere that runs a wide zone scheme, and really the first one that comes to mind is Kansas.
Yeah.
And they're losing Devin Neal, and so he would make a lot of sense there. But truly, anywhere that runs that type of scheme, I think would fit him really well. I really do think he could probably find a place where he's either the 1A or 1B for a program, whether that's at the G5 level, or at the Power 4 level. But I think he's going to find a pretty good landing spot. I hope he goes to a place where he's going to get an opportunity to play a lot. Because I do think he's a really talented player, but I just think his skill set really it's tailor-made for a specific scheme. And if it's not in that scheme, I do think he would struggle.
Yeah, I really did think he would, just because he was kind of good at a couple different things, maybe work well in the scheme that Baylor's running right now. But the two guys they have are fits that I didn't really – it kind of flipped on me. I thought it would be better for Richard Reese and then maybe tougher for Dawson Pendergrass, but it's the exact opposite of that. Like Washington and Pendergrass, perfect for this, and Richard Reese not. That surprised me a little bit.
I mean, I can see that. I just think in general, there's just this level of make-you-miss ability and this level of strength and size that's just different with those two. I mean, they both run so physically compared to Richard, and Richard's just a different kind of player than them. And so now you look at kind of what Baylor's trying to build. They're trying to find guys that have both of those skill sets, right? The speed, the burst through the hole, the initial quickness, but also the size to kind of make you miss. And I do think Michael Turner and especially Caden Knighton, who I've been very high on since he committed to Baylor and after his senior season, I think there's a level that he's going to get to potentially as a freshman that's really going to surprise some people.
How do you feel about Friday night games, and specifically Baylor-Auburn on Friday night to open up the season?
I'm not a huge fan of Friday night games. I've always been kind of just, that's a high school football night, right? And that's kind of always how it's been for me. And then college is on Saturday. But, if it gets Baylor into a primetime spot, which it's very likely going to with them versus Auburn, I think it's going to be a night game. It's going to be on ESPN or Fox. That's going to be really cool. The environment's going to be really good. So for a game specifically like that, I think it's fine, right? I think your fans are going to have no problem traveling when you're getting ready to take on Auburn. I think it's going to be a very viewed game as well, because it's two programs that I think are very excited and optimistic about their teams going into this season. So I think you're going to get a lot of eyeballs on that game as well. So for this specific one, I think it's good, but you start looking at some of the other games on that Big 12 slate, and I don't know that they're going to draw quite as well on that Friday night spot, but I know they're going to have less competition, so maybe that's the thinking for it.
Grayson, what is it is the spring football time. It starts everything kicking back up, as we get through this month and into April. What do you have like a check box thing of things you're looking for, following right now, recruiting wise and just development of the roster wise?
So for me, always when I go to these spring practices, it's about the new faces. And so seeing the new transfers, the new freshmen, that's kind of the biggest thing for me when I go to those. Just getting to see, these new guys that are added to the roster, seeing new replacements, and then, also seeing how young guys grow. I think that's another big part of this. You kind of know already, what Jackie Marshall is going to look like, where his frame is going to be. But a guy like Alex Foster, you're just excited to see, what did this offseason do for him? Or Brendan Bett, who we didn't get to see last year. Those are just a few names, but there's a lot that, I'm obviously really excited about when spring does roll around. Recruiting wise, it's really just mainly setting official visits. Still, they'll have a lot of guys on campus for practices once those get underway. Guys want to see kind of what the position coaches are like in a practice setting. So that's an exciting time as well. And then camp season, at the end of March here, I'll have the opening actually here in Austin. And then in April, I'll be in Houston for the second Under Armour camp. So lots of camps. That's obviously a great time as well. You see a lot of guys get rankings changes as they perform well at camps, like we saw from Jamarian Vincent this week, the Baylor commit, who went up from 140 in the top 247 to now being a top 70 prospect in the nation. So a big jump for him after he excelled at Under Armour camp back in March or back in February in Dallas. So all of that together just makes it a busy time right now. And then, of course, with basketball going on, that's still kind of the focus right now if things can get kind of put together as March Madness approaches.
What did that Baylor men's win over TCU do for you leading into this finale tomorrow at home against Houston?
It made me a lot more comfortable that Baylor is going to be in the NCAA tournament. But aside from that, it's just so difficult. Every game is just so difficult. And you're watching the game, and Baylor, I think most people who were watching that game would have thought Baylor was up by 10 with a minute left in the game. And you look, and it's a 2-point game. And it's just one of those things where just nothing has been easy really for this Baylor team all year. It's a good win. It's on the road against your rival. I understand all that, but TCU's not a tournament team, so still not a great team, a team that when you're playing pretty well, you should be able to handle. And instead it ends up coming down to 2 Rob Wright free throws in order for you to really kind of just seal the deal after giving up that 13-2 run at the end there. So going into this Houston game, I'm sitting back. Maybe Baylor has their best performance of the year. Maybe they catch Houston sleeping in this final game of the year since they've already wrapped up the conference championship. Maybe that stuff happens. I think that would be great because if Baylor gets this win, now you might be looking at Baylor climbing up to the 8th seed line, honestly, if they can get this done. Because right now, Bracket Matrix has them as a 9 seed. They moved up a level after beating TCU, which should put them comfortably in regardless of what happens in this game and the Big 12 tournament. It would take a lot, really. It would take a ton of chaos for them to get left out at this point. But now it's kind of about seeding. How many more wins can you get? How solidified can you get in that 8 or 9 seed region? And if you win a bunch of games, maybe you find yourself at the 7th seed. But I kind of doubt that at this point. I pretty much am counting on Baylor probably being an 8, 9, or 10 at the moment.
It is a relief that there's nothing that they have to do in the Big 12 tournament to make it in. I mean, again, that would just be for seeding. But Grayson, historically, Kansas City's just not the place they like to be, I guess.
Not at all. They have really struggled at the Big 12 tournament. You're right. I mean, if they had lost that TCU game and then lost this game to Houston, I think they probably would have had to win 2 games in Kansas City in order to get in. And that would have been a really tough place to be. But you get that TCU win, and now you again, I feel pretty confident that Baylor's going to be in the NCAA tournament now. But again, it's about seeding and about playing your best basketball. I mean, are we ever going to see this team's best basketball? And that doesn't necessarily mean a national title contender, but really just putting together a solid stretch of games where you're playing at a really high level and actually competing night in and night out instead of, getting blown out here, eking out a win there, beating a bad team, things like that. You just kind of want to see this team maybe gain a little bit of momentum. And if they were to beat Houston and then go into the Big 12 tournament, you're kind of sitting there going, okay, maybe they could make some noise here potentially, even though, that place has been really, really difficult for them to win.
Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com. Grayson, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.